I used to always say, save your rage for the stage. And because that really is your soapbox, that's your opportunity to, yes, inform and educate the people that come to your show. And really, it's not even that they're your audience. They're there as fellow human beings.
You're listening to Music Growth Talks, the podcast for musicpreneurs, with Andrew Apanov.
Hello everyone, Andrew Apanov here with a new edition of the Music Growth Talks podcast. Today's episode is somewhat unusual as it doesn't have a lot on marketing, but it does cover a different kind of growth. This is my conversation with the princess of punk, Bif Naked. The name my Canadian listeners may recognize in particular. Let me quote a description from Bif's website. Bif Naked is an international recording artist, poet, writer, troublemaker, nice girl, dishwasher, martial artist, ballerina, straight-ager, tree hugger, bare-knuckle fighter, Canadian citizen, and middle daughter. I think it's important to add for the context of our conversation, since we didn't talk about it much during the interview, that Bif is a cancer survivor, something she talks about in her memoir, Bificus, which I highly recommend you to check out. And she's currently finishing a book about cancer as well. Bif was born in New Delhi to teenage parents and was adopted by American missionaries and eventually ended up in Canada. She's got a fascinating life story. 10 records, multiple hits, toured the world for 20 years. You just go and look her up on Wikipedia for a full background if you're unfamiliar with Bif's career. And please listen on. Welcome to Music Growth Talks. I'm honestly honored to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Do you want to tell me something about the post on Instagram you published just a couple hours ago? I wasn't going to ask you about that, but I just went up and saw this very inspiring post you did about your words of the day.
Oh, good. Yeah. I don't know. I've been, social media is so strange, really, in our culture. It really is for most of us, maybe especially Generation X, probably worse for millennials and whatnot. But I've been on Twitter, for example, since 2009. And I didn't understand the format. I wasn't on Facebook. There was record company people who handled Facebook and MySpace because I didn't own a computer. I didn't have a television. I didn't care. I had dogs and listened to punk rock and worked out and did yoga, and I was really not all that interested. But I got Twitter on my BlackBerry in 2009, and without knowing what I was doing or knowing what else to do, I would put up a word of the day, or I would put up a food of the day, just because I just was being kind of silly and in lieu of writing anything that was, I don't know, I felt embarrassed to be too self-promoting regarding music. So I just did stuff like that. And sometimes I would do lots of different gratitude posts and whatnot. And so Twitter kind of has evolved. It ebbs and flows as far as the audience goes, because people get off of Twitter and do something else, or they go back to Facebook, and then Instagram kind of was developed, and Snapchat kind of at the same time as Instagram. I never really got into Snapchat because quite honestly, I just felt too self-conscious to always be shooting videos. I felt that was invading my privacy a little bit, and I was at a different place, I guess, in my emotional life when Snapchat came out. I think that my dad was in palliative care. I was going through a divorce. My dog died. I mean, it was a number of different things that led me to feel like I wasn't prepared to do a video every day. So Instagram was fun because I love taking pictures, and I always have. And to try and include photographs along with a message that's positive, no matter how corny or silly some of the audience feels it is. It doesn't necessarily always get a great number of likes, but I just think I just never cared much to my music publicists and managers' chagrin. It's something they're very concerned about all the time. A lot of business, and as you know, in the music business, entertainment business, they are very interested in your content, your algorithm, what you post, all the likes. And I just can't have that brain. My brain is always to just try and just be positive. And really, it's that simple.
But you are doing exactly what is needed for growth on social media. So you figured it out without trying hard at all, because the algorithms work the way that what people react to is being promoted organically. So if you post something interesting, positive, something that your audience is interested in, they will like and retweet, share, comment, and so on. So yeah, I mean, you clearly could, maybe you see some changes in the amount of likes you're getting on your photos that may be related to some other changes to that very platform, but you don't really need to know all the kind of aspects of how these platforms work. It's just the fact that you do it honestly, authentically. You don't try to push your work here all the time. So, and I've seen the kind of posts you've been publishing. You really get it well.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm so happy. That's very validating.
But it's, I mean, so anyway, I'm linking to your Instagram profile in the show notes so anyone can check it out as well and subscribe,
very cool.
Follow. Yes. So no, some really good stuff here. And okay, thank you for it. Which was kind of an unplanned side note, but yeah, I was really curious to just start with asking you what you've been working on lately, and if it's new book, new music, I don't know, maybe you're working on the documentary. I have no idea, honestly, and I'm intentional. I'm emphasizing the fact that I don't know just yet. So please let us know what you've been cooking lately.
Wow. Well, it's I guess it's kind of always ongoing, and I'm sure anyone who works for themselves, whether they're an artist or a self-employed writer or anything, something is always simmering, I suppose, on the stove. We recorded a new record between last November and this past February. And so those songs are still being mixed and mastered, and we're really excited about it. I just completed my first book of poetry just because I was bored and wanted to do a book of poetry in between trying to finish my book about cancer, which is, suffice to say, it's a little cerebral sometimes, and I get really bored writing it, and I get lost in the details and the rhetoric of statistics, or, if I'm trying to, for example, I have a chapter on chemotherapy, and then I talk about chemotherapy medications and how to mitigate side effects as far as from the positivity angle.
Yeah.
How to stay positive while your body is busy, basically. And that book is really hard to write. It can be really boring, and it can be kind of all-consuming. I had to change my reading glasses because it was literally so much time trying to do research to make sure I was speaking correctly to some of these pharmaceutical things that I was trying to talk about. So I did a book of poetry on the side, just because I was getting frustrated and I needed a break from the serious writing to do something that I really enjoyed. And yeah, we're looking forward to doing shows in the fall. I love playing acoustically. We just finished an acoustic show, Snake and myself. And my first book, which was a memoir, it still is doing well, and I still get invited to do book tours and speaking engagements surrounding that book. So I love it. I love all the aspects of kind of being a professional communicator, whether or not I'm singing or whether or not I'm speaking.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm linking to Bificus in the show notes as well. And it sounds like you're working on some serious book right there. Really cool about the poetry one as well. We'll add all the relevant links to the stuff that is published, and it's great that you're working on multiple projects at the same time. How were you thinking about different mediums, different channels of expressing your creativity some, 20 years ago? So did you work on something besides writing songs early on in your career, or is just something that you discovered, like something like writing books, only later on?
For me, I was always in dance classes when I was a kid, and throughout my young adult life, I really thought I would be a choreographer or a dancer until I discovered the theater. And then I wanted to be an actor. So studying in university, I was a musical theater major. That was my passion, and that's what I wanted to pursue as my life's work. And that really kind of opened the doors somehow because of the friends I made to being in a punk rock band. And really, it's the same as musical theater, I assure you. There aren't a lot of differences. Just look at Guar, that's theater, to the thousandth degree. And it still is cathartic and creative and really fulfilling. I never did do any dance choreography in my career, which is something I always think, well, maybe when I'm an old woman, I would love to return to that discipline and explore it a little more. Another thing I always did was paint. So I've always done cartooning and made paintings, and that comes and goes. I find that, and a lot of artists probably can relate to that. If you have multi-mediums that you work within, you can kind of oscillate between them all, really, whatever strikes you. And certainly wherever the money is, wherever helps you buy groceries is what you're going to do.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think it's there is quite some pressure on musicians, for example, music artists out there who are just trying to make it in the music business and may not be spending as much time on some other creative projects of theirs just because they're stressed because of having to deliver a new record, for example. I think it's really important for productivity and creativity to be cool with exploring different roads. So it's interesting how it's been for you. And yeah, so one of the things that I really like about your work, from what I've heard and seen so far, is how direct you've been in the messaging, and that you've been supporting particular causes. I really like the quote of Tom Morello. He said once in an interview to Billboard, I think, that all music is political. You either support status quo or, well, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember what he said exactly, but basically the idea is that all the music out there, and he even used the example of Justin Bieber, not to, to discuss a fellow Canadian artist, that you either support the status quo or not. And your songs in particular have been quite political. How do you approach that today?
Oh, well, it was different when I was younger. When I was a young woman making records, I was really fortunate to have adults, grown-ups that were the production team and the record companies and the managers who just let me be myself. And the first single I ever released as a solo artist was called Tell On You, Letter to My Rapist. And that was in 1995. It came out. We made a video for it. It's a ballad. It didn't do very well, but, they knew it wouldn't. It wasn't, that wasn't the point. The point wasn't that it was ever going to get on radio, which back then as a tattooed chick, I had a lot of trouble getting on rock radio anyway. But, the point was that was the song. That was the introduction to this artist. And basically, it was definitely a statement song. But at the same time, when I would perform this song in the early concert, I would perform it on the stage a cappella before the band came out. I would just go up there, and it was almost like self-torture. It was like, basically, I don't know, stabbing myself in front of the audience every single night, singing this very vulnerable song a cappella. And when I was a young person, especially, I didn't have the best voice in the world. I didn't have any training. I kind of had to just make it up as I went along. And from that point, I think that I kind of started to develop a reputation as a female that wouldn't back down from any topic and wouldn't tolerate any monkey business, basically.
Yeah.
And And that stayed with me for sure. I think all of us, as we grow up and relax into ourselves and relax into our passions and our causes, and I've changed a little bit. I'm not. I don't talk so much. I don't chime off about every battle that I want to fight. I really do pick and choose some of the different things to align myself with. And they're the same things today that they always were. Human rights, animal rights, gay and trans rights. And I mean, it just, I think that most people that I know and I've ever met anywhere in the world always kind of have the same mindset as I do. So I think that being said, I think it just has always also resonated with my audience.
I'm sure, yeah. It reminded me of what Amanda Palmer has been talking about quite a bit, and how being vulnerable and opening up about some of the most private and scary parts of her life through songs helped connect with listeners. I'm sure it's been happening with you, and I can only imagine how tough it can be at the same time. But it's also interesting to hear that you've been changing this approach to different causes. So as I understand, kind of moving more from this activist role into an educator maybe, and just spreading the words in a very positive light. I was hosting a panel at the Reeperbahn conference a couple of years ago about animal rights in the context of music. And it's something that kind of is particularly interesting to me personally. And it was interesting to hear how some artists who are animal rights activists, they're afraid to show it sometimes to the audience publicly or through the songs, because it's very difficult to build the audience, and they don't want to polarize the audience too much, even though I think it's very important to do that. Do you have opinion on that? If you stand for something very polarizing, be it a political, religious, or any kind of topic, should you speak up as an artist and use it as a platform to spread the words, or it's fine to just set it aside?
Well, I think that anybody who's passionate about something has the right to talk about it, and if you're an artist, certainly those feelings are going to permeate your lyrics or your painting. And if not your lyrics, they're going to permeate your stage show. I used to always say, save your rage for the stage. And because that really is your soapbox. That's your opportunity to, yes, inform and educate the people that come to your show, and really it's not even that they're your audience. They're there as fellow human beings, and you have an opportunity. You're the one with the microphone. You can still, spew your message of peace ultimately, and one love, and anything you want. And you can also, say, this is what I am. This is why I'm this way. I mean, there's a history of that being very important over the years, not just with the Rage guys and Tom Morello, who you quoted, but also, through the whole straight edge movement over the years. I mean, this is where we learned it. We learned it from Ian McKay and those guys. I mean, I learned it from John Joseph and the Cro-Mags. That's where we all learned to speak up and speak out. We learned it from, Bad Brains. And we watched all these guys that were our heroes. They renounced hatred. They renounced racism. They renounced cruelty. And it was amazing. One of the first bands I ever really fell in love with was a band called Shelter. And Shelter really they didn't necessarily start the Krishna core movement, but it was really important to me as a young person to hear their words. They infused the message, literally, of the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, in their song lyrics. And man, I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard in my whole life. And it opened up my mind, just as a writer and as a songwriter, that you can, whatever you want to say is what you get to say. This is your chance, your opportunity. And as far as, animal activism and that goes, I always try and have a community table at my shows, which has usually the local rescue agencies. I invite them all to come and leave their brochures and contact information at my merch table. But I also as a person, as a fellow human traveling with other musicians, I've always been the only vegan in my band and in my family, throughout my life. And that for me was something that never actually bothered me. I was always the odd man out, always. I was the odd man out as a woman, the only girl, but also the only vegan. And so I always knew that, for me to sit there and admonish my band guys about having hamburgers or whatever, it wasn't necessary. That wasn't my job. My job was to live as an example.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and they could just living symbiotically with these people who I love very much. I'm not going to hate on them for their choices. And a lot of abolitionist vegans disagree with me about that. They say you shouldn't even, be in a relationship with these people in any form. How can they, it's disrespectful if they, eat eggs in front of you. It's disrespectful. I never saw it that way because I always saw veganism as more like my religion than anything else. And they have a different religion. Literally, it just had nothing to do with my path. But if I could be an example by how I live, how I speak, and just the things that I stay true to year after year after year, for me, that was really more authentically how I operate than anything else. I love t-shirts. I love flags. I love being able to spread messages in that way whenever I have an appearance or anything like that, but veganism is very funny in North America. It's become a bit elitist in a way. And it's also, it's a class issue now because it's very expensive to eat healthy. When the impoverished people of the world cannot afford these fancy vegan restaurants, so I do not go to those restaurants, even though they're vegan. That's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. But I always think I'm a hypocrite if I want to try and work for social justice and fight against food poverty for people. If I'm, participating in this elitist kind of movement, I've always eaten fruits and vegetables just because that's what I like. And so I make sure that I am very conscious of the messages that I do send.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. I share a similar approach to this. I'm really glad to hear it from you. I may even be quoting you to some of my fellow vegan friends who tend to be more sensitive about, well, I'm vegan, but not everyone, as you mentioned, shares the same positive attitudes towards just being out there as an example. I really like that. I bet it wasn't easy to tour as a vegan like even 10 years ago, but looks like you managed well.
Honestly, even in places like the Czech Republic, Russia, anywhere that I have been where the band is provided food, often, especially again, yes, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was dumplings and beer and boiled meat. And, God bless these promoters because their mother cooked for the band, which is wonderful. It's beautiful. But of course, I didn't eat bread. I didn't eat wheat. I didn't drink alcohol. And I didn't eat meat. I didn't eat cheese. So for someone like me, it was very difficult, but ultimately it was easy because I could, somewhere I'm going to find a tomato. Literally, that was in my brain. I will find a tomato. And if I go to a restaurant with my band and we only have 1 hour to eat before the concert, I'm going to order a plate of tomatoes and they can have their, whatever they're having, spaghetti, parmesans or whatever they're having. And I'm going to have my plate of tomatoes and I'm going to be grateful that I can have that and go do a show. And literally, that's always how I thought. So for me, it wasn't really hard. It was only hard if I was upset.
Yeah.
As long as I didn't allow it to make me feel sorry for myself, really, that's the bottom line. That's the only reason anybody in the world would feel, bad that they didn't have their fancy vegan hot dog or whatever people are accustomed to eating or their almond milks or all this stuff. If they had no almond milk, I didn't complain. I just had my coffee black.
Yeah.
It's really simple, and it's just perspective. And I think that because in
Yeah.
the early days there was nothing available, now it's amazing. Now I can go to my store and get vegan whipped cream, made out of coconuts. I mean, it's incredible. The product they have now, it's so easy to eat plants. It's just so easy. However, it's expensive. So again, I'm always conscious of that. And that's why I stopped posting on social media a food of the day. I used to love to have a food of the day because it was just a gentle suggestion. And it was actually papayas that did me in because I suggested papaya as the food of the day one day. And both of my dogs were still alive at the time. And I cooked for my dogs. I never fed them dog food because I was convinced there were horses and everything. So I just cook for them rice and whatever they eat, chopped spinach and stuff.
Yeah.
But papaya was very expensive. And I would have a papaya with my dogs. And, I thought about it and I thought there's a lot of people that cannot afford to go buy a papaya and then not only eat the papaya, but waste half of it on their dogs. And I thought, what do I look like that I'm posting this impossible ideology, surrounding food poverty to people? And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't, because I eat an avocado. I just think there's people can't afford an avocado. I'm not going to post that I ate an avocado. Like literally, I won't post it because I feel like it's unattainable for many people. And I just, as I got older, I became more conscious of food security surrounding our eating and around plant-based eating particularly.
Yeah, that's some proper hardcore veganism right there. But it's all about the mindset, really. It's about being creative also. I like how you've been approaching that. Really inspiring. I think that this kind of mindset is applicable to all aspects of life. So we've been talking about plant-based diet here for a few minutes. You've been sharing some interesting insights on that. But really, if you think that you don't have enough money for some kind of music gear that doesn't allow you to start creating music, or you think that you have some kind of other limitations these days because there's so much stuff and so much technology and everything is available, from food to like everything is available everywhere, but with different price tags. Clearly, you can just shift your perspective and do whatever you can with the resources you've got. This is what I get from your message, besides the very interesting and practical to me tips about vegan lifestyle. But not sure if you would agree with generalizing like that.
Oh, I totally would agree. 100%. Because it really is our perspective. There's a lot of people who only want a certain type of, for example, all the guitar players I know, they only want these custom guitars, and yeah, then you have kids that are just starting out. They're lucky if they can find a broken guitar in the garbage. And if they find one, it's like finding gold and they can still write a song on it. It's all about perspective. Who's richer, the person with the garbage guitar or the rock star in the castle?
I think the music industry can learn a lot from the punk rock scene, from the straight edge movement, and it's all applicable once again, not just to the lifestyle, but to everything, including the business. And music business is quite an interesting place these days because it's ever changing, and it's oftentimes a bit difficult to adapt, even though there are some positive movements and changes. I guess you must be quite either quite excited or terrified about your upcoming music release in the current environment. How do you feel about your upcoming records and what kind of expectations you've got with the streaming world and using social media to potentially promote it and so on?
Oh, well, honestly, fantastic. And I always have, because anything that we create as creators, I mean, we want to delight anyone who hears what we've made, just like a painter wants to pull off the curtain and the big reveal is the work of art. And I think as far as streaming, what's incredible about it is that anyone, anywhere, at any time can find your music and listen to it and appreciate it and discover it and share it. And honestly, as musicians, our music can reach more people than it ever had. Is it a revenue source any longer? No, not at all. Not even close. But it wasn't, for many bands. Once Napster happened, that shift began for any bands that were still struggling. And unless you have sponsors, patron saints, or a day job, touring is very close to impossible. But the way we started touring, in these early punk bands, just like you mentioned, why the ethos is still quite relevant from the old straight edge scene and the punk scene is because it was DIY, do it yourself. And that's how we toured. We slept in our van, we shared a rice bowl and we just did it for the love of the show. We were thrilled to go and play, for example, at the Satyricon in Portland, Oregon in 1992. We made $23, American dollars. And we were excited that we could put it in a gas tank so that we could get to the next show. Literally, that was our mindset. Every show was a victory. No matter if there were 10 people, when I was working on this record recently with Doug Fury, we talked about playing the Rock 'em Ring, and we were laughing about how good the chocolates were backstage. I mean, that was like the thrill of, it wasn't that we were on stage with a prodigy. That wasn't even in our brains. We were thinking about the chocolate, like it was free food. We were like, oh my God, all this free food. It was amazing. And that attitude never leaves you. So when you release a single nowadays, any band will tell you this in any genre. It just really depends, A, on your perspective, and B, on, how you can spread the word. There's a lot of artists in this day and age, and we can think of course, we think of pop stars, like Drake or any of these, or you mentioned Justin Bieber, any of these artists, they can drop a single. They can surprise. You can get surprised in the morning. Oh, surprise. They've released a single and it is platinum. It's like 1 million streams in 1 hour or whatever it is. And then there's bands who are, your average Swedish death metal band that's on the road in Europe in winter, trying, desperately to get kids out to shows, and they can drop a single and nobody will hear it, and it's very unbalanced in that way. But, what's the trick? Is it money? Is it money that these companies are putting behind, some artist single? If you have a record deal, what does that really mean anymore? What does it look like? And is part of their marketing plan have to do with buying views, buying likes, buying followers? I mean, this is the world we're in. How do we, as independent artists compete against that? Well, at the end of the day, it's not actually, contrary to popular belief, it's not actually a competition any longer, because it's really apples and oranges. Everyone is in their own lane.
Yeah.
And that's my theory. And I just think with us to release new music, my hope obviously is to reach a larger audience, like anybody's hope. But I know that my fans who like my music will probably really like it. And so I go, man, that'd be really great. And then they can, shake my hand when they see me at a show and go, hey, we like your song. And honestly, that has to be enough for artists today, because it's very difficult to actually have music be a revenue source anymore. Shows are a revenue source. Touring is a revenue source.
Yeah, but it can even become a revenue source if you double down on your core audience. And I'm fully with you on the idea that everyone is kind of in their own lane and you'll, for example, have some core fan base. And if you just focus on making sure that your fans hear the new record, because it's also a challenge. They may not be following you on a particular social media platform you are on. They are not following you on Spotify yet, or they're using Deezer and not Apple Music or Spotify. So you just want to ensure that you've done everything you can to reach them. And then if they really like it, and most probably they will spread the word for you as well. So just focusing on the people who really care instead of trying to reach masses is also just a practical and effective strategy from what we see, at least. And it really helps if you have some kind of core following. So anyway, but yeah, it's a tricky topic, but you've got some good and relevant thoughts there. So yeah, really looking forward to checking out your new stuff, by the way. So
thank you.
Once
Very
again,
cool.
we will be linking to everything once it's out. Like, I will just still edit if someone is listening to us later on this year or next year. And yeah, I think you should consider running a membership platform of some kind, maybe a Patreon or something like that, because I think you could mobilize your super fans on one platform. Just give them a platform to support you and to chat with Chavi and so on. Just a side note, it's like
Cool.
I'm listening to you and I'm kind of brainstorming what kind of things could work for you. Anyway, really interesting things. Well, for now, for the time being, like, let's say in the summer of 2019, what is the best platform to find more about you, or maybe to follow you or to subscribe to your updates? What's your preferred medium platform right now?
Well, currently, I mean, because I try and do everything organically, and that's more of my hope, to be just authentically do it myself. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm on Facebook a lot, but a lot of my musician friends are better at keeping more on top of their different social medias. And I always find that for me, I try and do a broad section of posting. I don't have any scheduled posting. A lot of my friends who are in bands, they subscribe to scheduling, so that they're always posting something. I just find that I am inspired and then I will post something, basically. But that's the most honest way to find me. And I have all the messages are usually open. So I still send out mail outs. I get requests still today to visit people. I think that once I had breast cancer 10 years ago now, it's my anniversary this year, I started getting requests to go do hospital visits for patients. And that kind of led me into volunteering. I just never would have had that opportunity to discover that path had I not been diagnosed myself. So I've always thought of my own diagnosis as a real treasure in a way, because it led me to doing some of the, I guess, volunteer work that I do. I love it. So I always want to be available for people. And I do send a lot of mail out. I send cards out all the time.
Awesome.
And I love it. I really do. And when we do shows, I do try and meet everyone after the show, and we do signings and stuff. And it's hours and hours, because I talk and talk and talk until my manager tells me stop talking. You're gonna lose your voice. But it's just, they can find me on any of the social media, and that's really, I just run it, and I love it. I love meeting my fans.
Amazing. Nothing but inspiring. I really appreciate you sharing and just doing it the way you do. And I hope that it will, work as an example to some of the musicians listening to you right now. So thank you so much for all these cool insights.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, we'll keep an eye on everything once again, encouraging everyone to check out the website and social media platforms. We're linking to it all. So Bif, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, it was my sincere pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening. This was Bif Naked. go check her out on social media. She is pretty active. She talked about it here, of course, but just look her up on Instagram and Twitter. Just great accounts to follow. I absolutely love the kind of stuff she shares. And watch out for her upcoming releases, the poems, the book, the music, of course. And I'm linking to some other resources in the show notes as well. You can find it at dotedmusic.com. On the blog we have a post about these episodes, number 137. And if you haven't subscribed to this very podcast yet, please consider doing so at musicgrowthtalks.com. That's pretty much it for today. Thank you all for listening, and till next time.
You've been listening to Music Growth Talks with Andrew Apanov. Find more episodes and subscribe at musicgrowthtalks.com.